Hello, my name is Katrina Cochrane. I am the founder and owner of Positive Dyslexia, and I'm a trained specialist and assessor, and I run conferences and deliver training, and I'm passionate about dyslexia. I'm a mother of a child with dyslexia who's just recently found out they have got co-occurring difficulties as well as an adult. So I have been there. I'm also a trustee of a charity called the Adult Dyslexia Centre, and they support children and adults. So I'm hoping that this talk will give you a few of my tips. If you suspect your child has got dyslexia, what do you do next? So hopefully you'll find this interesting and informative. If you are listening to this, you may have a lot of questions about dyslexia. There's loads of myths about it. One of the things I find recently is a lot of adults coming up to me and saying, I used to have dyslexia. And that's quite interesting because actually you don't suddenly grow out of it. You always are dyslexic. You've just got better coping strategies. You may suspect your child is dyslexic, so you may be a little bit less on the journey than others, and you want to know where to start. You may already have had an assessment of your child and have started that journey. So it's going to be an interesting ride, and hopefully some of these slides will help you. There's lots of reasons why you might be suspecting dyslexia, and I've seen the impact of COVID. We're seeing children now really coming out of those couple of years homeschooling, out of school, really seeing that impact now a couple of years down the line. Doesn't mean to say they're dyslexic. It could be just that they have had that gap in their schooling. I think the family history is really important. If there is dyslexia in the family, chances are that there is dyslexia in your child. So we need to think about all these different things and weigh up what is going on. Certainly, there are lots of visible signs about dyslexia, and we know all of these ones. Difficulties with left and right, for example. Difficulties with any kind of sequence, so days of the week, months of the year, anything with a sequence in it, like the alphabet, for example. So putting out the alphabet, telling you the alphabet, all of those things may be impaired. If they're slightly on the dyspraxic side, then there could be difficulty with tying shoelaces, difficulty with buttons, getting dressed in the morning, getting dressed for games at school, getting undressed. All of those things will be difficult for them. And in addition to that, they may have difficulty with a knife and fork. As they get older, then there may be difficulties learning to ride a bike, for example, as well. Left and right confusion, as we said, and perhaps a very odd pencil grip, very, very tricky pencil grip there. And then this final one is something that I think, luckily, we don't have to put on our CV as adults, but it's very, very important when you're young, is colouring in the lines and being able to do those accurately. And that may be a problem for these children. We also know all the classic things about B's and D's being reversed, and maybe sixes and nines. Parents tell me about their children mirror writing as well. But best to see whether or not these things are developmental and whether or not they grow out of them. We know that dyslexia does go into all of these different areas. We know that the link between dyspraxia, for example, and dyslexia is probably the greatest crossover. So about 60% of children with dyslexia will have dyspraxia. And we know that dyslexia affects 3 or 4 children in every classroom. So we're looking at between about 10 and 15% of the population having dyslexia. A lot more children being identified with autistic spectrum disorder, ADHD, although the waiting lists are long. A lot of children who've had speech and language difficulties, perhaps been signed off too quickly from those difficulties. Dyscalculia, quite a relatively new term to many parents. But we do have to be very, very careful not to label a child with dyscalculia when it could be difficulties with maths in dyslexia. So it's around the language of maths being the difficulty there rather than the actual maths problems. I would say actually that most children that I've assessed have been right there in the middle with a little bit of everything there. And we're looking at other things making up that profile now as well. So, you know, the impact of long COVID as well, starting to have an impact as well here. So I put together my top tips for parents. The first slide is a little bit naughty because obviously every parent would like to have their child assessed by an educational psychologist, but they are as rare as hen's teeth. If you can get an educational psychologist to look at your child, then make sure they're not just observing. I've heard that they're just observing, and unless the child has got behavioural difficulties, they're not going to come up with anything. Make sure they do the full bank of tests as well. Often I see reports where crucial tests are missing. But make that initial appointment with your child's SENCO. So lots of parents say to me, well, what's SENCO? SENCO is the Special Educational Needs Coordinator. And by law, every school has to have one. So find out who they are, make a formal appointment. You don't want to be sort of talking to someone like this in the corridor or on the school gates or anything like that. Make a formal appointment. Maybe bring along anything you've got already. Tell the SENCO about your concerns, the family difficulties, anything like that, and see what they're going to do next. And don't think that there's going to be any quick improvement. These things do take time, so give the school time to put things in place and see if they work. Number two, really important to check vision and hearing. And I do a child questionnaire and a school questionnaire. And one of the things that I always ask before an assessment is, have you had a recent hearing and eyesight test? Lots of the children that I assess have had a history of ear infections. They've had glue ear, they've had grommets fitted, and all of those things have meant that they don't hear those pure sounds properly. So check those things, check the vision. Again, lots of children I assess, they tell me, and no one's actually asked them beforehand. So I always ask them, what does the print do on the page? And they say it jumps about. I see rivers of print. I see pixels of print. I see whirls or swirls of print. And parents are absolutely aghast because they hadn't realised. But for the child, that's normal to them. So until someone asks them, they think it's completely normal, and every child sees like that. So if that's the problem and their eyesight, a piece of text will look like that. This makes me feel a bit sick. It could be something that needs to be signposted to an optometrist, not an optician, but an optometrist. So checking out whether or not there's a visual difficulty there that an optician can't spot. So you can see there that we're on a sort of grey background there. A lot of children don't like white paper. They don't like black print on white paper. And certainly a grey shade helps them. So sorting out a whiteboard in the class can really help them, making it into a colour that really is helpful for them. Or maybe one of those coloured overlays that were in the previous slide, and they can use that as a tracking line as well. So lots of children, when I hear them read out loud, they're skipping words, they're missing lines, they're repeating the same line again. Helping them with that tracking line does support their reading. And think about what you can do to support your child at home. So there are lots of things you can do around teaching the time, and lots of children with dyslexia have difficulty not only with telling the time, but concept of time. So what does in 10 minutes mean? So instead of just saying you've got 5 minutes to leave the house for school, show them time passing. So using something like a sand timer, which shows that sand, that time passing really helps them. Adapt commercial games, make things fun, like snakes and ladders. Clap out syllables. If you get syllables correct, go up. If you get them wrong, go down the snake. Very important to teach the pure sounds, and so as parents, you're not saying m and t and f. It's those pure sounds without the schwa. It's and t and f. So all of those pure sounds, really important. Number 4, try and make things as multisensory as you can in everything that you do. In nursery school, everything is multisensory. It's wonderful. But as they go through the school, then that multisensory element does go away. And so we need to bring that back. Try and help them at home with things like sounds, letters, using plasticine, put paint in jiffy bags, use wooden alphabets, magnetic letters on the fridge, clap out syllables. All of those things are very multisensory. If you're on the beach in the summer, use a stick on the sand and write out letters, say the sounds on the sand on the beach as well. So anything that's visual, auditory and kinesthetic really does work. And think about a formal assessment. I think this is a really important thing, to think about the child's age, think about the cost. It's very expensive. We're probably talking around about £500–600. Many parents, I say, if you've got that sort of money, think about spending on tuition. It may be better spent on some private tuition with a specialist teacher. Formal assessment, we talk about 7 or 8 being about the best time to have a formal assessment. But if the child, for example, is coming up to GCSEs, I do tell parents to hold off. They will be tested by school for exam access arrangements, and it won't be a diagnosis, but it will be enough to get them access arrangements. And it may be a screener, little screener like Nessie, about £10, takes about 15 minutes, gives you a little report. Is a really good starting point to see whether or not there's anything there and whether or not you should go further. And many schools are actually doing these screeners to start with anyway. It's quite a bone of contention whether or not we should label or not label children, actually. And if you think about it, there can be lots of plus points and negative points to having that label. It means that there is a fixed view of difficulties sometimes, and people don't move out of that view of their difficulties. People still feel there's a bit of a stigma attached to having a label. But it can be a passport to further support from school and work. It can be an access to additional services. And for most children and adults, it's confirmation that they're not lazy, they're not stupid, and they're not thick. And that could be really important in itself. Very important that you think about joining a local support group, and there are many local dyslexia associations who can provide that support. So the BDA have a list of all the local associations, and there should be one near to you in all sorts of areas. London, Surrey, Cornwall, all sorts of places have got local associations that you can join, and they have speakers, support groups, all of those things. Adult Dyslexia Centre I spoke about earlier, they have a wonderful 6-week parents course, and they go through all sorts of different subjects like reading, spelling, maths, and that's £90 for 6 sessions. So really, really worthwhile if you want to find out more about how to support your child at home. There are great Facebook groups. There are really good Pinterest sites. Lots and lots of places out there selling resources to support dyslexic children at home as well. And I think really important, this slide, number 7, trust your instincts as a parent. Often parents get told there's nothing wrong with their child. sometimes I send off a school questionnaire to a school, and it'll come back from the school and they'll say, well, this child's not even on our radar. So if you think that there's something that your child's not making the progress that they should be, they're not meeting their potential, trust your instincts as a parent. It's really important that you do, and keep going, keep asking what the school is going to do next. Don't take no for an answer. Really important as well, that often children, I think, parents are told, well, they're not the worst in the class. Well, they may not be the worst in the class, but they still should be meeting their potential. And this slide is really as a response to a bit of a movement that's around at the moment, that these children, and actually I think I'm talking about groups of children, so neurodiverse children, have this superpower. And I know a story of a little girl who burst into tears recently because she said, I haven't got a superpower, I'm just me. And it was putting on another level, another layer of pressure on her to be something else. And, I think it's really important to recognize that not all children with dyslexia are going to be on Richard Branson's. Actually, I don't think I'd want my son to be Richard Branson, but anyway, that's but we know that 40% of billionaires are dyslexic, but there's a lot of other people who just are themselves. They may be late developers. They may not get the GCSE grades they should have, they deserve. They may not get the A-level grades they deserve. Chances are by university it starts evening out, and we see that universities are brilliant with dyslexic students, and they tend to get the degrees that they should get by the time they leave university. So just watch out for them being late developers, and find their strengths, play on their strengths. Don't pick out their weaknesses all the time. Sometimes school don't realize that they've got achievements out of school. Make sure the school realize that. And I think praise them, but also make sure they understand it's okay to fail. If it's in a safe environment, it is okay to fail in that safe environment and learn from that blip. And also understand that even if your child doesn't get an educational health and care plan, or even exam access arrangements, because there are very, very stringent rules about these, they may still be eligible for disabled students allowance at university and access to work when they get into employment. So make sure that they get everything they can get, but even if they don't get certain things, they may be eligible for other things. Dyslexia is certainly not a barrier to success, but I think as parents, we do need to recognise that there is no one size that fits all. These are all unique, individual children, and they need to be treated in that way. I do see so-called individual education plans, which are actually completely cut and paste. They're not individual at all. They're very generic. So make sure that if you see something like that, it's really about your child's particular needs. How are they going to monitor progress? What are they going to do next if progress isn't being made? So that's my top 10 tips. Hopefully it gives you some idea what to do. If you think about dyslexia, explain dyslexia to your child. This cartoon on the right is a lovely cartoon that's on the BDA YouTube channel, and it's called See Dyslexia Differently. It's only a couple of minutes long, and it really gives a lovely insight into dyslexia to explain that to your child. Positive dyslexia can offer loads of things to parents. We put on lots of training. We do inset training for schools, and obviously the assessments that we carry out as well. We've got conferences in Edgehill, Cardiff and Liverpool this year, so it'd be lovely to see you to come along and meet us live, and love to meet you in person. So hopefully we'll see you at one of these events. Those are my contact details. I'd be really, really happy to see any emails from any parent, anybody who'd like to talk to me further and discuss their child. So thank you very much for listening, and see you again. Bye.